Grow. I'm Andrew. Today we're looking at hydroponics. A few months ago on Gardener's World, Monty Don looked at Aqua Garden up in Tobden, and after the filming stopped and it went back to his garden, he called hydroponics Frankenstein. I would have dismissed that really, because I've only just started getting into hydroponics and aquaponics in the last couple of years. I've never done it in the garden before, but I've just invested in a very basic 16 cell kit with a tank, and today I'm going to show you how to build it, put it all together. And I think hydroponics really is the future of growing for many people who have a busy life and a busy job. It's really one of those kits that you only need to monitor once a week, as long as you keep this full. And from being at the Aqua Garden up in Tobden, I saw what their yields were and the taste of the food, and really you can't compare to commercial growing of tomatoes compared to the growing of aquaponic tomatoes or hydroponic tomatoes. They certainly have a heck of a lot more taste. Maybe not to some extent, some people say, as growing in open soil, but they're a different taste and just as sweet and just as beautiful. And really, I don't think hydroponics is Frankenstein. I think hydroponics really is part of the future of growing. So let's set up our kit. I'm going to set up in our greenhouse this year, and hopefully you'll join us and watch us grow our tomatoes. So the kit we're using some coir compost mixed in with Delfoot compost 50-50, so it's a bracken based coir compost, completely and totally peat free, which is environmentally friendly. We have here our tank which we'll put our feed in. We're not using pH up or pH down as you would find in hydroponics. We're going to try and experiment with different organic feeds, just so you can see what goes on. So we're just going to put a tomato feed in there because we're dealing mainly with tomatoes, lettuce and chilli in this project. Then we have our pots themselves, and then in the end we have our flood trays where the water rushes in. We're going to show you how they work in a bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to do it on this border here. Now, we're not going to leave it as soil, we're going to put a membrane down on the soil. As you can see, if we go in, because we've had a really hot spring, the soil here is now really dusty, and really just covering it with membrane for the we'll get more worm activity going on underneath. Eventually we're hoping to turn this greenhouse purely to a hard standing, and we're hoping to get a second greenhouse which is going to be just next door to it when we can find one for a reasonable price. So we put our membrane down. The reason for the membrane is not just to suppress weeds, but as the pipes run from the tank there all the way across, it keeps the water at a constant temperature rather than it touching open ground or even concrete, because it will lower the temperature. So what we want to do is not shock the roots of the plants. We're setting out our flood trays now, which you can see here. The idea is very simple. I'll show you the valves in a bit. The water comes down here to a junction, up through this hole here, into a valve, floods the tray. When the tray gets to a certain level, the valve switches off. When the water drops down, the tray floods again. So your plants are constantly being watered, but because we're dealing with tomatoes and chilies and lettuces, we can switch it off on the valve, which we're going to fit to this end here, and you can open it up every 2 days. Again, it's simpler than coming into the greenhouse every day, and certainly when you're on holiday, it's something you can set up, leave and go away and come back and realise it's okay. Your plants are not dead, they haven't been fried by the heat, or they haven't starved because they've not been getting water and feed. So here's our trays all set up all the way down, and this is equivalent growing space as it would be in the soil. If you look up here, I don't know if you can see because it's a bit light today, we have these plant supports which fall down like that. We used these last year, they're really good, less faffing around than string, and great for tomatoes. We're putting tomatoes on the back row, but if you look at these old valves all the way down, you can see them. We'll take a look at one close up. So if you look at this one here, it's a very simple system. As the tank floods, this lifts, cuts off the water. As the tank goes down, the water goes down, it switches it back on, and that's fitted just down here. There's a little noggin, and it slots on like so. Get on, there you go. That goes through there, and then you have a cover that goes over the top to hide the valve and protect it. The cover's not really necessary because if the valve's in nice and tight it won't shift, and that makes it go up and down, and that's it at the moment. Now we'll just fit all the pipe work and you can see how easy it is. So as you can see here, I've laid the pipe out and it runs all the way down to my tank. And if we go down here, you can see all the way down to here that I fitted a small valve. Incredibly easy to do, it's just a matter of pushing them on to the fittings. I know we have to get the water into these auto pots, and the way to do that is again by just using a pair of scissors and using these, which is a 4-way split along the line, and at the end a T-split, and the pipe pushes onto these. It's very easy. I'm going to fit them now and I'll show you afterwards. So this is the valve when it's open. At the moment, as you can see, it's just slipped off that mount. Just push it back in. What I want to show you now is how easy it is to fit the pipe. And literally, just to fit the pipe, you push it on there with a little force, which is really hard to do at the moment because I've only got one hand. But normally, you just shove that on there, and it slots right on. So after about 15-20 minutes, we've got the entire kit set up, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill this tank up here, and I'm going to flood the system and show you how it works. We've got the pots in, with the pots down there. Then I'm going to show you how to fill the pots using clay balls, coir compost and bracken. So I'm filling up the tank at the moment. I've just opened the valve and you can see it's starting to flood the trays. It's going down the line. You can see here, flooding this one. And the principle is very simple. That the trays keep filling up until they're full enough to feed the plants, and then after that the valve shuts them down. Next I'm going to show you how to do this, which is coir compost. For those of you who don't know what coir compost, it is coconut husks. So it's sustainable, and it's a byproduct of coconut and coconut milk. So to make up coir compost, which comes in a dry block, which looks like that, those are the dry blocks that come in. To make it usable, you have to add water. So basically now I'm going to fill this bucket up with water until the coir is submerged, and let it expand out, and it will completely and totally fill that bucket when it's finished. So all the pots are in now and the water's running through the system, and we've added some clay balls. For those who don't know what clay balls are, really all they are, let's grab some, let's see, that's clay balls, and it helps with drainage. You can see already they're getting wet, they retain moisture, but obviously we can't plant straight into that, or else the compost will just run through into the auto pot. So what we need to do then is just put a layer of membrane on, make sure it's level, and then repeat it all across the pots, and then we can start planting. So this is a 50-50 blend of coir and wool and bracken compost from Dalefoot. This will go into the tomatoes. We've planted up some here already, so you can see quite happily sat in their auto pots. So that's it. That's 8 tomatoes planted in an auto pot system. I've put seaweed feed in the drum at the end, about 6 capfuls, because it's about 2 gallons that, and that should feed them for the next few weeks. The water's running through the system. The pots at the front will have salads. We're not planting them yet, we'll plant them in a couple of weeks time, and some chillies as well. It didn't take too long, roughly about an hour and a half, so that's great. So that's it from Life on Pig Row. All our pots now in for our tomatoes in the autopot system. I'll trial our hydroponics to see if it is a Frankenstein system or the way of the future. I'd like to thank Martyna Krol, Aine McConville and Aine Dougles from Incredible Edible Aqua Garden, who helped me last year with some training to bring me up to speed with hydroponics. Thanks to them for helping me set up this system, and stay tuned and see what happens, and we'll be back soon and tell you what goes on with our tomatoes. Remember, hydroponics, it can be the future for many of us growing now.